Maybe we can start.
Okay, it's time now, so let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the IETF 124 IV Working Group meeting. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Chu Fang, and my co-chair Daniel is on site. Please be aware that this session is being recorded. So this is about the Note-well slide. Actually, it's a new Note-well slide, thanks to my co-chair for putting this into the slides. But I don't think there is much change in its real content. So by participating in the IETF, you agree to follow the IETF processes and policies. And every IETF participant should behave in a professional manner and show each other with respect and courtesy. And it's also about, it's also about the RPR disclosure rules that you should follow related to the IETF contribution. And as well as the reminder of your awareness that any of your IETF activities will be made public except for your privacy information. For any of the details, please talk to the working group chairs or AD. And the meeting tips, we are using Meetecho as usual. So if you are in-person participants, make sure we encourage the use of Meetecho Lite version. So if you are using the on-site version, please keep your audio and video off. And if you are remote, you should also keep your audio and video off unless you are actively speaking. And for both on-site and remote, please join the queue to make a comment or ask a question. And thanks for the cooperation. And please help us take the notes. We have already sent the link to the chat window, and our session today will be 1 hour and a half. So the meeting information is available on the slides below. Again, we work remote for most of the time, so we would like to remind the working group, please make good use of the mailing list. Any working group consensus is determined on the mailing list. So please make good use of the mailing list, but also we meet 3 times a year for the IETF meeting, but we can also arrange the interim meetings as needed. And so if you have any specific topics that you would like to be covered and discussed, you can make requests to chairs and we could arrange any of the interim meetings as needed. And we could also have the informal working group informal meetings as the WebEx working group meeting. Any working group member can make requests to chairs if your design team would like to meet and discuss regularly. And the information of this meeting will be announced on the working group list, so everyone should be free and public to join the meeting. And here is our agenda today, which has already been posted before. I'm unsure if you have reviewed this before, but if not, maybe it's time now to have a look at this agenda today and let us know if you have any agenda question.
Just one thing to add here. So Diego, they will be presenting both in IV and in a different working group. So we might need to do a swap of the slots in case both the presentation are at the same time. I can do it for him. You can do it for him. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Would you like to go ahead, Daniela?
working group status.
Your mic is not there.
Thank you. So, working group status. Let me make it a little bit bigger because I cannot even read it. The core model. Uh, I think we did a great job at the last meeting with tons of polling. We resolved a lot of issues. The draft is pretty stable. Uh, Both the authors and the chairs believe that is ready to be moved to the working group last call. We are doing the IPR polling. I don't want to do finger pointing, but we need some answers to the polling from that area of the room. And once the APR polling is concluded, we can move on. We have 4 other working group documents, 3 of which will be on agenda today, so we will have time to go through them. The one that will not be presented today is the network inventory location. Bo sent an update, but if you wanted to say a few words, that would be appreciated.
This is Bo from Huawei, and I have sent the updates of the location on the mailing list. Actually, this location draft hasn't been updated in this IETF meeting, but there is only one open issue for us to work on because there's a open issue from Matt, and he's suggesting we are adding more description on how to use this location model, like how to curate the devices information from the different location. So our next step is to add operational consideration section to explain how to use this model. So then after that, we think the model is quite stable, and we feel we can doing working labs call. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. And then a few words on liaisons, incoming and outgoing. We have an incoming liaison from on modeling coordination as usual for ITUT question 14. They are hosting coordination virtual meetings periodically. Actually, this liaison was referring to a number of past meetings. This has been updated by a new one that was sent by Scott on the mailing list. I don't remember if it was this morning or yesterday, where you can find all the details of the upcoming meetings. If you want to join, that's a good opportunity to do some cross SDO coordination. The liaison is marked for action, but I don't think that there is any action other than acknowledge the receivement. So again, if you wanted to join, you are more than welcome. Yes, Mesh.
Mahesh, quick question. So who, if anybody, is joining these coordination calls from IETF side?
Not me.
Okay, good, because I want to make sure that somebody is there, and if there are any action items that are coming out of it.
Yes, I'm joining also as a question 14 participants, but I will be there.
You are blessed, our liaison manager. Outgoing, I don't know if you remember that a while back we received a liaison from BBF they communicated to us that they were starting a new work on network resource model. This work was planned to be based on the Ivy core model and a number of other documents. Their request was mostly to understand the readiness of our documents and when we do expect to see them published as RFCs. So we explain in our reply, we explain a little bit how the IETF process work and the fact that unfortunately the publication date is a little bit outside our control. So this is it. I think this is it also for our admin session, and we are ready to start with the first presentation. The first one. Let me share it. There you go.
Oh, here. Hello, everyone. My name is Bo. On behalf of my co-authors, I'm giving the updates of this inventory topology model. Which direction? Seems not working. Oh, give me the control. Okay. It's not work. Does not work. Oh, thanks. First, a quick recap. This inventory topology model was adopted several meetings ago. And this topology model major provides two functions. One is that augmenting the topology 8345 topology model with inventory references. Another part is augmenting the network inventory with topology node references. So in this way, it's providing bidirectional navigation between inventory and topology. And we also adding the open issues here. Right now, we almost nearly resolved most of issues, but we have 2 points we in trying to ask Italo and Iowa to check it about, because that's there's 2 remaining issue we like you to confirm on that. And this is a quick difference about the latest version and the old young tree. Left is old and right is new. You can see, but at first I like to thank Italo, Sergio, Phil, Nigel, and all. Thanks for your comments from mailing list and also the feedback on the Ivy weekly core, because most of updates reflecting all your comments here. And you can see that from the old young tree, we removed the physical interface name. This is per Italo's comments. This is the main of packet network specific definition may not be applicable to the optical network. So we agreed to remove that. And on the new young tree, you can see we still keep the cable name, though Italo and Iowa proposed that these 2 link nodes may belong to passive inventory. I will talk about in the following slides. And then you can see that we, under the termination point, we add the port breakout capability here. This is not we define. We actually move this from base inventory because this is capability related. And the last one, you can see that the change is that we switch the read-only nodes to the read-write nodes to the read-only, but I will talk about in the detail in the following slides. And the first point, the first issue, actually, it's association between the link and the cable. Italo and Iwa suggested that full cable can be defined in passive inventory, like the bottom right, that this kind of scenario, which there are several path segments, there will be termination point to segment mapping, that kind of. But here we think in our model, we think we trying to using our topology model to cover the base cases like the bottom right up, that this kind of direct connection point to point fiber or cable connection. In this way, the topology model doesn't, this kind of use case doesn't need to rely on the more of passive inventory model. So this we think, in this way we can think this is a balance between the simple and the complex case. For complex case, we are adding in our draft to distinguish these two cases and referring the other passive inventory as example to implement the more complex cases. So this is the first issue. Next is port breakout. You can see on the left, the young tree, we adding under the termination point with the port breakout container. This is directly coming from the base inventory. This is a container with presence definition. It's showing up only for the breakout capability ports. Under this port breakout definition, each one channel will band to at most one physical interface. This is not an open issue. It's actually reflection the comments proposed by Italy on the working group mailing list. And we also added an example to showing how to use this model in the topology. You can see we give an example of 400 giga interface breakout into 4 channel, each with 100 gig ports. The 30 point is about some certain points defined with read-write or read-only. Actually, my initial thinking is that this topology model can provide a read-only mapping of network inventory and topology. But Matt reminds me that several young leaves cannot be auto-discovered by the controller. So this is a pending updates. I need to work on that. I need to revert some of read-only to read-write again. And we are planning to add a specific session operational consideration to describe that why sometimes like fields like cable name, link type need not be discovered by the controller, and we'll need to some knowledge from operators to configure this. And also the network inventory, the node ref, network ref cannot be discovered by the inventory and still needs to more configuration. So as I said before, this in this revision, we resolved most of issues. There is only one pending updates we need to reflect in the next revision. After that, we think we will solicit working group last call. Thanks.
Thank you. Questions?
Are there any questions?
I have one. So
Mm-hmm.
you said that there are parameters that cannot be discovered, and so
Yeah.
there is the need to have them read write and not read only.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question would be, so we are assuming that the operator inserts these parameters configures this parameter in the SDN controller, and then the augmented inventory is exposed through the MVI. Why did you decide to go for this approach and not, for example, add these parameters directly in the consumer of the controller MVI, which could be the inventory database, the inventory tool? Why do you think that is better to configure these parameters in the SDN controller and then pass them to the inventory rather than configuring them directly in the inventory? What is the benefit of doing so?
I think because this is the model we are thinking directly exposed by the controller. And I think there are several higher management system may not be inventory management.
Okay, so if there are
Yeah.
many different consumers, it makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we will explain this in an operational consideration, make it clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It could be helpful to explain the decision in the draft. Yes.
Yes.
Italo?
Thank you. A few comments on the bidirectional navigation. I think we have to be careful, especially when we make a rewrite. Then by duplicating information, we have the potential to create inconsistency. So I would like to understand if there is a real need to have this bidirectional association in the interface. I understand in the application, because there are some applications that need to navigate from A to B and some which need to navigate from B to A. Why do we need to provide the double information on the interface, especially if becomes rewrite is becoming even more complex? Or can we select only one of the two options for navigation and simplify?
I'm not.
Is it a question for me or for that?
For both, for the author, for the working group, actually.
For the working group,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm trying to explain the
Yeah.
model here. Like
No, I understand. I'm asking the working group whether there is a need for the bidirectional navigation,
Yeah.
or we can pick one. I don't have any preference
Yeah.
between
Yeah.
one or the other, to be very honest. and then let the application figure it out how to translate.
I will share some information here. Like in the open issue discussion, it seems that Oscar mentioned they have some needs to do the two direction navigation. So,
I have
yeah.
the problem. I have the problem that some people is confusing the information that they need in the application from the information that we need on an interface, and that's my concern on many of these designs.
Italo, you have the superpower to fill up the queue immediately.
Yeah. Yeah, I will just answer to this one. Actually, you can control it because we are providing two features for this. So it's up to the implementation to decide whether you want to have, I would say, the double way for the navigation or only implement one way of it. So currently it's up to the implementer to do this, and also to the one who will be, I would say, maybe in the future to select the if it wants to have, I would say, just one way or two ways. But you are right that the implication of this need to be recorded somehow. If we have, I would say, the double way, and then we have the read right there in the operational consideration, we have to take care that we don't create any conflict, and I would say deviation of the information that are stored away. But that's a fair point that we need to discuss there.
But the drawback of making it so free from implementation that you can in your network integrate vendors which implement A, vendor which implements B, and vendor which implements both, and you have to manage it. Yeah. It's an integration issue.
Exactly. That's the point.
Yeah, just adding to that, like in the model, you assume there's always one-to-one mapping between a node and a network element versus network. So is it going to always be the case?
Yeah. We feel
I'm not
this is
exactly
more...
sure, because let's say you have a network element which on top of which you can have multiple nodes. If you let's say virtually split the network element, or also maybe the other way around, you could have a node that represent multiple network elements collocated. So I'm not sure if the mapping of one-to-one is always the case.
I think there is an open issue on this, and when we did in SICAM, we did something different. We said that multiple nodes can reference to the same network element, but I had some doubts after that. And maybe it's easier, in my opinion, if you have a one-to-one relationship, because the complexity, you can have a many-to-many association, and the topology model has a lot. I mean, we can all work in both ways, but the topology model has a lot of tools that allows you to abstract. So if you want to say this network element is actually multi-layer, so it's supporting nodes in multiple layers, you can have one node which is representing the network element one-to-one, and then you can do the split for different, and then use the topology. So I think it's easier than complicating this association, but maybe this is still an open issue in the GitHub. But my personal opinion is that it's much easier if you keep a one-to-one association from inventory and topology, and use the topology abstraction and underlay and overlay relationship to describe the complex abstraction that you can create on top of it.
That's my consideration also, because I feel like that could be like layer 2, layer 3 T topology to consider that.
Yeah, I mean, just question, was this spelled out in the
Not yet.
in the draft? Yeah, okay, that's what I was trying.
I think the open issue is still open, so we need to come to a conclusion, and then maybe she can update the draft.
Yes.
Great. The other question I have is on the cable part. So you are saying that this is only for the special case that you keep the name, the cable name and link type in here for like point-to-point direct single fiber, maybe.
Yes.
Because for all other cases where you could have multiple cables between the source and destination, and then each cable could have multiple fibers, right? You need to be mapped to a link can be mapped to an individual individual fiber core in the fiber within the cable. So those things cannot be handled. So how do you distinguish these two cases? Like if
we adding the description, but we don't add some constraint.
You don't
on
add
the
a
model.
constraint in the end, just the description.
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention that I agree with one reference as well, because it can be abstracted at topology at different layers, and if you would have a list, it would be complicated. So you can still go from multiple nodes to single network element.
On this navigation, on this, can you go to the slide on topology to cable? My suggestion here, I see the argument. I mean, if this is a simple use case, maybe you don't have to go into the generic solution which can address complex use case. But maybe my suggestion is, if you can write a couple of JSON example, maybe the one on top, the one below, and for the one on top, we can write both the new one, the specific one, and the generic one, and really see whether applying the generic case to the simple use case is really more complex or not. And then we can have an informed decision whether it makes sense to have something that works only on specific use case, in addition to the generic solution that works in every use case. Because I understand that if you have a specific solution which is very common, having a solution which is much simpler may help. But if I'm not sure that is that much simpler in the simple use case. But maybe it's good to have a JSON example, and then people can see, okay, if I use the generic solution in this specific use case, this is the JSON. If I use the new solution, the ad hoc solution, this is the example, and we can compare how complex are the two options and decide whether it makes sense or not.
This could depend on the example that you pick.
No, the example on the top.
This one. Okay.
Yes, the one on the top. See how this the JSON code for case one with a generic solution, the JSON code for case one with a direct link association. If there is a significant simplification on the data that you exchange on the interface, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a specific solution. If there is no major difference, and it's the working group to decide whether it makes sense or not. But there will be an informed decision.
Okay. We can give example. Yeah, you can confirm whether our example is correct. Okay.
So Olga, you are still in the queue, but you already asked your question.
So
Then it's Nigel's turn.
Oh, Nigel.
Just wanted to go back to the two-way references versus one-way. So in TAPI, we concluded on single direction, and we said that we should make it dependent upon the life cycle ordering. So my piece of hardware appears, then it gives rise to functions. The functions point at the hardware. That's nice and atomic. But if the hardware has to get updated too, then I have two notifications. That back to Italo's point about misalignment and so on. So it seemed cleaner for the thing that appeared second to reference the thing it was related to, giving you one statement rather than the thing having to also update and get notifications on both. So it just seemed tidier to do one-way references. And as Olga said, of course, the application can then decide to reverse it, put both in or whatever else. So that's the way we've also traditionally run interfaces before as well. So same in TMF. So it just seemed to be a better way of doing it. So
Thank you.
Okay, so a quick time check.
Mhm.
5 minutes late, but we have a
there's a-
buffer of 10 minutes, so it's okay.
Yeah, software is a quite big, easy one. So do
I will share the other
Okay.
slides.
Thanks, everyone. Bora again. I am going to give an update on the inventory software extension also. So here also a quick recap that software extension model on the left. You can see we directly extend the base inventory. And we are thinking the relationship with entitlement is that entitlement will augmenting both base and inventory to support some non-physical network element and some software components like software modules or other useful bias or that kind of software components also. And for your awareness, we don't have any open issues. We give the link there, you can check. And here is a quick young tree overview that you can see why in this latest update, what's our update looks like. You can see on the left is the base inventory structure that onto the base inventory, we added 4 parts of augmentation on the 4 list of base inventory. That is software revision of network element, patch of software revision under the network element, and also the component software revision and patch of component. So you can see we don't change anything on the specific software attributes there, like status, installation time, activation time, these kind of status and timestamp information. So this is quite straightforward that you can see our software extension is quite bending to the base inventory. And here we try to give an example to show what's the usage of software extension that in this example, we're showing the router with a software OS and this software OS with two patches. One has been activated, the other is installed but not activated. And also on one, there is a line card, there is a FPGA image, has one of the software revision and also a patch. Patch has not been activated. So you can see if it is not activated, then it will show the none there. So here, that's a example we showing to the how to use this model. So currently, this model is quite straightforward and we don't have any open issues. So we think we can add in more further examples to show of like some network elements like software or virtual ones, then this draft is quite stable. So we are thinking of that we will going working group last call. So any questions on this draft?
I have one
Mm-hmm.
to which I should know the answer, but I probably forgot it,
Mm-hmm.
which is suppose that tomorrow we send this draft to the ISG and they say, why have you decoupled the software inventory to the hardware slash core model? I remember we discussed this, but I forgot why we decided to do this decoupling. So would you be ready to answer this question if the ISG would ask it?
I think at that the time, the service provider feel they don't think software is applicable to both packet and optical network, right? Yeah, I think you are nodding. Yeah.
Perfect. You are prepared. Next one.
So I'm done.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone.
The next one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, the slides. No, let me share them. I have them. There you go. And then click. Okay.
Does this work?
Yes.
Hello, so Camilo Cardona from NTT, and this is the update on the entitlement inventory model. Well, this is fairly new, but it's a working group draft now. I want to thank everybody who gave us feedback. There was a lot of feedback. Thanks a lot. Yep. We didn't have much time to make like a strong update. Actually, I personally was hesitating to actually make a version 1, but I mean, we did a few changes, a bit of scoping the clarification and wording. This work comes from a long series of work about asset management. We try to remove that and be more focused on entitlements. We added a few more visions and not, but the draft still doesn't have the model, which is like the big thing that we have to do. So the model is there. I'll talk a bit more about that. So let me just go first on capabilities. So as whoever's new on this topic, we are modeling entitlements or licenses, and we need to say what an entitlement or a license covers, right? I mean, that's the whole point of licenses at for many of the basic products. But this model does not try to have a generic theory of capabilities or features or whatever. No, it's just a description of the capabilities that a license covers. So Nigel is going to present later another work that is more deep into the theory of describing capabilities in a very generic way. Is of course complex, but I mean, sometimes complexity cannot be avoided, as you have seen in all the other drafts of this working group. So yeah, but the capabilities will still remain in the model, but we will describe them as simple as possible. Yeah, let's see how that goes. We probably will have a few interactions as had been with the other models in the next sessions of this working group. So like I was saying, we have a bunch of feedback. We are preparing the next model. Well, we are preparing to add the model and the examples in the draft. To be honest, I mean, this work has been long, and we added the model initially, and it created more confusion than clarification. So we took another approach here, was mostly from Diego, honestly, it was genius. So we started slowly, and now we're going to add the model. The model and examples are there. Italo has provided great feedback. about it. Two things that I want to discuss that we're trying to project into the draft. First is that well, first of all, the entitlement model, let's say, covers a lot of use cases, going from simple to hard complexity. And Italy recommended, hey, let's have a strategy of how when a device or a server does not cover like the most complex use cases, how they can embrace still the model in generic ways. Like, should we add a feature, a young feature in this case, or something like that? We have been going over it. It seems like with just containers, like presence of containers, we can deal with that. So we're happy about it. Also, we discussed with Italo how this goes into the whole network element and component part of the base inventory model. If you guys familiar, the network element, depending on the model you're covering, might be something abstract. Like for instance, if you have 6, well, not abstract, but if you have 6 switches, physical switches in a stock representing one single element, then it's a single network element, even though there are 6 devices, physical devices that you can buy and use them individually. So in that case, there's like a complex case, let's say, and you have the typical Pixabox case, Pixabox. So we are trying to come up again with a good implementation section that describes how the entitlement model will work there, when we will recommend probably that in simple cases like the Pixabox case, or I mean, there are some elements that even though they are huge, not Pixaboxes, they behave just as one. Then you can basically just use the network element as base. And for others, for instance, the stack, the network stack, or personally, the thing that I really want to model is the pay-as-you-grow router. I mean, different vendors here have multiple of those. In that cases, the network, the line cards, they basically become like the individual, and they have their own licenses. It's real life type of deployment, but that's a complex case. So we want to explain, depending on the case, how to use the model. So that's why the operational implementation section of that will be a bit, let's say, big. Yeah, we keep working. I mean, I think I'm talking enough about all that. We will have multiple examples. I have learned from Matt recently that examples should go at the end because that way they're not normative. So I'm trying to deal with that, how we can integrate all that there. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. Hopefully for China, we will have that. Yeah, and what's next? Basically, including the model to the draft. Yeah, and we'll have fun discussions in the future.
It seems you have a lot of work to do, but you have a clear in mind what to do. So this is good.
Yeah, hopefully.
I have a question. So I found it curious that you have the capability framework in NMOP and then the capability model in Ivy. Is there a reason for the split?
Nigel, can you help me? Can you help me so I don't lie? The question is why we have NMOP, well, we have NMOP and inventory. And I know the reason is that in NMOP, we're going to be more practical, and here is like the most deep in theory, but I think your wording will be much better.
So your question was what? Sorry,
why you decided to split the framework in NMOP and the capability?
You don't want to wait for my presentation then, or?
Yeah, he has like 10 minutes.
You'd like me to explain? I should do my presentation now, shall I?
If you want, if you are
I can give a quick summary because you did ask the question. So first of all, capability is complex. So as you said, you can go very deeply with it. And what we didn't want to do was end up going on a 25-year mission to define the best capability model in the universe and produce no value whatsoever. So the intention was in NMOP to look at the patterns of capability, and in Ivy to look at specific usages, but to do them in parallel incrementally. So we can say that Ivy gives a real practical application of the initial stage of the framework we do, and then we do a little bit more framework, and then Ivy gives another practical application of that. So we get some meaningful value out of the activity. So Ivy's the, I don't think the NMOP guys won't like me to say, Ivy's where the value is, and NMOP's where the theory is, essentially.
Okay, so let me ask another question. So you identified capabilities as something bigger than inventory capabilities.
That's right. That's right.
So capabilities as a wider scope, and here you are just dealing
Looking
with
at
the inventory
specifically,
capabilities.
although the capability in a network the capability that is anyway, the capability in a network equipment situation can become very deep and complex. The intention is not to dig into that immediately either, but there's more beyond. There's in the capability modeling style, you could imagine looking at a negotiation at a contract level about what capabilities I want, which is very independent of the specific hardware. It's extremely high up in the functional space. So the capability spreads very broadly, and the intention is to try and get the framework to cater for that breadth, but use Ivy as a place where we test the reality of that framework in initially simple cases and gradually expand, but recognizing that the framework goes beyond just Ivy. I don't know if that makes enough sense, but
and you can see why we split it, and then
can
we're just going to refer to capabilities as something, as a, as a string.
how's the grilling finished? Can I sit down now? Or? Thank you very much.
I'm happy to see Rashad in the queue to have his view as well.
Yeah, so this is Rashad speaking as NMOP chair. So Nigel did present in NMOP, but there's been no talk about adoption, anything. So I'm not disputing that it should be or not be, but there's no decision made where that doc will be yet. So.
Well, and if just to be concrete, but just about the relationship of this model to capabilities, what probably we're going to end up doing is have capabilities kind of you will have class of capabilities, and then depending on the class, we will reference something. So in the most simple capabilities will be just, let's say, a description of the capability per se. And then in the future, when we have the actual model of capabilities, you can have a type of capability referencing to that model that the other model, and that will be the way. That's what we plan so far, to make it, let's say, more modular.
Seems reasonable. Swami.
Yeah, Swami from Nokia. One question in the scope of what you are planning in the draft, is it you want to restrict to the things that are already in the network and something that gets exposed by a controller, or do you think that you also include things that are planned and
no, the things that are implemented. This will be an inventory of what is there, not a catalog of what can be there.
No, it could be planned inventory as well, right? So something that's
if
okay,
it's
for
concrete,
example, let's say that I buy, let's say I'm just taking example, Microsoft license, right?
Yes.
And it's real inventory when I put the license on my laptop. Otherwise, I still bought it, I paid for it, it's in my system, right? So I think with licenses, it's slightly different compared to deployed hardware and software. It's something that's worth looking at, in my view.
Well, it's interesting. So we will, like in the case you say, if you have a license that you bought and the license is not being used right now, installed in any element, that we support. So you can have a license, let's say a license server that holds those licenses, but they are not being right now in any device.
Equipment.
In any device, yes, that's one of the base cases we have. What we don't have, we had it initially, and I think we're moving away from it, but we'll have more discussions, is more user-oriented type of licenses. It just has another level of complexity. So maybe we are not going to put it on a scope right now. We can discuss this. So maybe Camilo has a license, I think the power of doing this. Italo doesn't have it. That one in networking is a bit harder. So we are probably going to move away from it initially. Then we will see whether.
Okay, fair.
Thank you. Thanks, Camilo.
Okay, so for this presentation, it's about an update to the updated model for passive inventory draft. Okay, so for the draft, we didn't produce an update, but there are some offline work still ongoing. The main thing that the main thing that we have worked on is because from the last IETF, there was a comment, I think, believe from Mahesh, with regarding to whether the current Ivy Charter statement needs an update in order to accommodate or include the worker for passive inventory. I believe at that point, like none of the authors probably um, have read or considered the charter carefully. So after that, we come back and we did some homework. Um, we did some research so also shared our thoughts in a mailing list. From our view, it seems like the current draft statement, we believe, would be good enough or would be broad enough to contain the work for passive inventory. We're going to have, I'm going to show the details on the next page. But also there are also work which has started or initiated in other SDOs on the passive inventory. So I'm just bringing here for the reference, and there's ITUT work. I was trying to find a reference, but I didn't get it in there. Maybe Italo and others can complement. But also for BBF, we have already there's already work to incorporate the passive inventory modeling, and also as well as the mapping between the topology and the passive inventory, which is the same work as we are doing here. Now, on the charter statement, as I said, we have posted on the mailing list, but I didn't see feedback or no objections. So what the current statement says, the IV scope of the work extended the inventory of network element, and then with a primary focus on those that operate at layer 0 and 3, right? Which includes both hardware and software inventory. And then also mapping between the topology and inventory. So from what it says, it suggests that the device and components that are operating at layer 0 should be in a scope, which is what the passive inventory belongs, right? Because it's operate at layer 0, and it also is a part of the network. Even like most of the elements are unmanaged, but they are still traditionally considered as an inventory, although they are probably managed by a different inventory system than the network management system, right? And also we have some consideration about whether a passive device like a splitter or a fiber access terminal can be considered, can be also modeled as a network element, because in this case, then we could reuse the same infrastructure as we already put for the network element. And there's an open issue for that, because the current model did not reuse the network element, but we're already in a way to discuss discussing whether it is the model needs to be changed to reflect that. And there's also consideration of optical fibers or other types of cables, which is part of the passive inventory. And the cables especially could be internal or external to the network element, which according to our previous discussion, it should be considered for within the modeling of the passive inventory. There's also, we also did the quite extensive research, and there were interesting findings, probably thanks to Nigel, on the literature on the term defined in a broader scope than IETF, and which seem to suggest that they are aligned with the current charter statement. So what we are trying to say here now is, at least from the author's perspective, we believe that the charter statement may not need an update, and we would like to hear more reviews and comments, and we are kindly requesting if the working group could consider a working group adoption call for that. Given that the draft is in pretty ready state, and there are also good interest from the industry on the support for passive inventory. Yeah, so I saw Mahesh, please.
So, Mahesh, so I do see that you did send a more detailed email. It was probably just before this ITF meeting, about 2 weeks before. So uh, I do owe you a response, and I was hoping that maybe this meeting I would get a few more comments from people. So what I guess I'm struggling with, and it's not to say that what the argument you're making is not valid. What I'm trying to determine is what's the boundary at which we determine something is part of the passive inventory. So I'll give you an example. One of them we give is the optical cable. A great example. Should it be part of the inventory or not? I'll give you another example. Power cable. Should that be part of the inventory, passive inventory model? Should
Actually, do you remember the exercise that we tried to do more or less 1 year ago to identify what is inventory? Yeah. And Nigel came up with this huge monster, and we finally gave up because it was too complex to
exactly. So it's a yeah. I think that the apt word that Nigel just mentioned is it's a slippery slope of what is passive inventory, and that's what I'll admit I'm struggling with. So if we can clearly define what is passive inventory going to include and what it's not going to include, maybe by either drawing a box around the physical element and saying this is within the scope and this is not within the scope, that would help, I think, both the working group and me come to a conclusion. Because right now, I think the definition of what is passive inventory is pretty much up in the air.
Yeah. So actually, I would suggest I would give the same suggestion that I gave last year when we came with after the big monster. If it's not possible to define to find a definition of what passive inventory is, because we cannot define in a few words that set of features. Maybe in this case we are in a more narrow context than inventory in general, and we can simply list it. Example, whatever is in this list is passive inventory, whatever is not considered passive inventory. Optical cable, yes. Power cable, no. Something like this could be a more practical way if it's too complex to come with the definition of passive inventory.
Okay, so I'm glad there are people queued up for more discussion. I think even there, somebody, so you come up with a list, somebody might challenge you on that list to say, why is power cable, for example, not part of the inventory?
And
so
then we will try to drive some consensus there.
Okay, the thing is, you almost have to have a box around what you think should be part of the inventory and what should not be. So is something in a closet in some room, is that part of the passive inventory or not? Or is it something that is attached to the device, passive inventory? What is that definition that we want to include? What we should exclude? More a generic definition than examples would help.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Mahesh. In the current draft, we are trying to put like a very limited scope, but I guess that description is not clear enough. And also as well as like we are looking through different technologies and try to explore what are the elements in the passive inventory that are managed or considered as an asset that's tracked by the operators, right? Like cables for sure. They will track it, and also the passive boxes that's sitting on the street or things like that. Those are the things they are interested in understanding where it is and how it sits in between two network elements, for example, right? So yeah, we probably need to do a better job laying out what and getting a consensus on what are the list of items that are considered as passive inventory in the scope of Ivy. I don't think we can cover everything, but just need an agreement on the scope.
So first, I had a small objection to the chair's comment. It was an elegant and sophisticated model of a complicated problem space, not a monster. But, anyway, it was a monster. But I think the key thing is if the passive imagery element gives rise to critical functionality, like a splitter clearly has a functional purpose, that really has to be represented. And it's whereas if it's if you think of I don't know, the manhole cover or something, that's a passive imagery item, but it's not of interest to us at all. So there's things that are really very much outside and very much inside. And I think if we start to define those extreme and then gradually move inwards until we find things that are sitting on the margins, and then we just make a specific choice on those cases. I mean, the power cable, you could say, well, yeah, clearly it's providing power to the equipment and therefore it's functionally critical if it fails. But it seems to be on the outer edge and therefore probably not. But so I think we can start to narrow the space of uncertainty. I think that will be an important thing. So we say things that are certainly outside, like the manhole cover, and things that are certainly inside, like the splitter, because it's functional. And then we can, gradually find that line, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kent.
Yeah, hi, Kent Watson. I came to the microphone a couple IETFs back with a use case that I just want to bring again to to those working groups' attention, which is quantum networking.
Yep.
And something like a power cable certainly doesn't matter, but even like something that does matter, which you probably wouldn't want to focus on, is a splice connector. Just the connector splicing two fiber optic cables, because in quantum photonics it introduces delay, has a dB loss. There's actually distance involved, and those you want to be able to associate properties and attributes to even something as small as a splice connector.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you also I reflected there was a mentioning about the unit in terms of distance, or could be significantly smaller in quantum network, right? Yeah, that all needs to be considered.
But how hard it is to find a definition that specifically includes it and does not, and maybe not something else. I don't know if I made myself clear. So we said that option A is we find the definition of what is passive, what is not. Is it easy enough to find a definition that specifically includes splicing? And is it possible, or we needed the list?
I assume that's a question to the working group. It's not specifically to me.
I mean, yeah. To me, anything that's in the path of communication.
It wouldn't be necessary to track a specific serial number of a splice, but the manufacturer of the splice, you would want to, like the model number, you would want. You would hope to be able to do that. You would hope to be able to track the model number, because then you can look up into a catalog or a library database and understand what expected dB loss or distance properties it has. Of course, those things could be determined like through measurements, but they can also be estimated. The estimates are always less fidelity than the actual measurements made by the manufacturer. So a model number would be ideal to be tracked, but not the serial number.
Yeah. The model number has also specs like splitting ratio, especially for access. This is required to have.
Okay, Roberto.
Roberto. So for me, the inventory, so coming from the optical domain, the inventory of passive is a key requirement, because in optical there are multiple passive devices like multiplexer, splitter, combiner, so on, that we definitely need it. And probably for me, a simple rule to define what is required to be in the inventory and what is not is uh, where is the signal passing over. So if a passive is part somehow of the topology and there is a signal so that is passing over it, for me that is something that absolutely need to be inventory.
Sounds like a good definition.
Yeah.
Italo.
Yes, I think I like what we did in the past, and to have the list of what is part of the inventory for this version. Like I keep the list open. So coming back to my comment, at this moment in time, I don't see requirements to to have an inventory for the power cable. It's not part of the passive inventory. Maybe in 2 years that we will see good use cases that needs to move them. We can add and we can do a BIS or an update to the RSC and add the new components as part of passive inventory. We can the design should be flexible enough to add the new type of components, and then we get rid of because the definition will be so abstract that then we will have a long debate about whether a power cable is or not part of that definition. That becomes the interpretation of the definition at the end of the day. We will spend a lot of time finding a definition, which is very hard, and then we will spend a lot of time matching whether a given example is part of a definition. I would be more opportunistic. Is there a need or not to report this inventory data? If yes, it's part of the inventory. If it's not part of the inventory.
Just want to make one comment on Kent's comment on the splices and so on. In some networks, it's critical they be represented. In others, it isn't. In some splices are more important than others, and so on. What we did for that in TAPI was we recognized that we needed to provide the opportunity to represent the things, but we shouldn't enforce that they be represented all the time. So that's a very important thing. So there are some things that are, when they're on the boundary, it's very much in my network, it's important. In my network, it isn't. So we need to provide the opportunity for that. I think that was the important
So
thing.
you mean making that optional?
Making it absolutely optional and saying very clearly that we recognize that sometimes you might not think it's important. Why the hell is it in there? But the other network needs it. So we've purposely put it in here because we've got cases where it's been seen to be necessary. So we make those statements. We say in this case it is necessary. I think it's important to do that.
Yeah, but making the option also means that we still need to put this into the modeling consideration, right? Yeah, exactly.
So, Mahesh, coming back, essentially, based on comments, I think that one is what Roberto made about optical. It seems to be an important piece that everyone feels is missing from the current, the passive elements of optical seem to be missing from our inventory model, and they are critical. So maybe the focus should be on saying, what do we need from an optical inventory perspective? And maybe that's what initially the model can focus on. And that's just a suggestion, by the way.
Yeah.
The second, and I think that's tied to Italo's comment, which is maybe if you're looking for a definition, one of the ways to look at it is what pieces of the passive inventory do we need documented to help in terms of the networking aspect?
Yeah.
So yes, power cable is important and it provides power, but does it directly affect your network?
Right.
If it doesn't, maybe that shouldn't be considered. These are again suggestions on how to come up with a definition, a possible definition for what we want to include. So if it's an passive element that is including of some aspect of networking, we do include it. Otherwise, we don't.
Yeah.
So an example of a manhole, which has got nothing to do with networking, you would not include.
Yeah, thanks. I think our thoughts are exactly along this line of considering the definition of what's in the passive inventory, right?
Hi, Kent again. Just want to respond to Nigel's comment. I agree that the it should be possible to not have to specify everything. Like
Mhm.
in certainly in some use cases, it's not necessary to specify the splices. But I view that as more a case of the instance data. Like the instance data would choose to populate that detail or not. The Yang model would, I think, have to support the ability to always be able to populate it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, as Mahesh was saying before, it would be interesting to understand from the working group if you agree with Iowa in saying that the actual charter um, covers also passive inventory. And I think the better way to do that is with the polling. So is passive inventory in scope of actual charter?
So the only thing I would add to that poll is fine as written. I would with a better definition for passive inventory.
Of course, yeah. Yes. Well, it seems that there is agreement. Twelve, 13. Okay, very good. Thanks a lot, Iowa. And we are ready for the last presentation.
Nigel Davis presenting on behalf of the other contributors. This is about expressing capability of devices in this particular group and devices. I presented this at NMOP. This is more about the framework, so it's important we think about it as a broad consideration, as I said earlier, so give me the opportunity to skip this slide then on that basis. But I wanted to go through a more detailed consideration here. So I've got a sort of a very rough use case sketch just to emphasize the importance of when capabilities need to be available and so on. So I want to provide a specific service. I haven't got the equipment, so I look at what I might need to buy. I've got a particular combination of behaviors that I need to put in place. I'm going to choose some components to do that. I don't have them yet. In my design, I need to select the components. To select the components, I need to understand what the capabilities are, otherwise I can't select them. So it's critical that I have an understanding of the capabilities of things before they arrive, and to let me analyze how to set up the solution. The RC 3535 that we looked at in NMOP specifically said that from the operators that they need to be able to discover the capabilities of devices, and my suggestion here is they need to be able to discover them before they've even got the devices. So it's a thing independent of the device. The device could report it, but the device isn't there necessarily, and therefore we need to be able to get hold of it before the device is there. Today, capabilities are very much described in loose English or other languages, human languages, and the data can tend to be a bit incomplete, ambiguous, in various different terminologies and so on, inconsistent, etc. People make it work, but they lose some opportunities to get all the use out of the devices, etc. As we move forward, and now we have LLMs available to help us go and mine the stuff we've got, it's possible that we can improve the interpretation and so on, but we need some more cohesive structure to put these things in than just loose Englishy stuff. So the goal is to get this is a long range goal, to get a good structure of definition for expression of capabilities in a very broad set of cases. We've got lots of work we can base that on. I've got a few slides later on with that detail in, and the focus then is in NMOP on framework, and in Ivy and other groups on specific usages. The intention is not to go on, and as I said earlier, not to go on and on and on for 25 years to produce a perfect framework and then It's to take a little bit of framework, a little bit of usage, prove it, 6 months, maybe some hackathons and so on to show stuff working. So click. So this is a very busy slide on purpose. The text is very small, so you can't read it. The intention is not to read the text, it's just to emphasize that we're not starting from zero. Other work's been done in lots of other spaces. So I've just listed a couple of examples, a few examples here, but in ONF and IGT 7711 from study group 15 and the ONF core model that came from, there's material present in the model. There was stuff that was developed in parallel with that modeling work and was going to feed into it and so on, that we can take advantage from. The pictures there, the bottom one, what's the little pointy thing? I can't point on the, point down here, point up there. That one there, which you can see. That one there is talking about emergent behavior. This one here is recognizing that behavior combines, and you combine behaviors to form bigger behaviors and you split them into small ones and so on. There's a very complex assembly, and it's looking at protection. This one here is taking the one at the top. Where's the point? That wasn't what I want to do with it now. Go back. That one there is looking at a broader context of the sort of expressions I was saying earlier, actually, when I'm looking at negotiating for capabilities, I'm coming in from the top end. That recognizes there's all sorts of angles on this. And I was going to go through two, because these two relate to this group, device and equipment. This is showing, this is a very crude little picture of backplanes and so on, but it's looking at two different backplanes. One's got 3 slots in, one's got 2 slots. I need to understand that. I need to understand what those slots are capable of taking. I need to understand whether they can take particular bits of hardware in combination and what those bits of hardware actually produce as functions. The little example here in this bit here, these are temperature detectors. It's got 3, 4, sorry, 3, I can't count, 4 temperature detectors on the board, but they're different purposes, different types of detectors. These 2 dark red ones are actually on components that might be on top of a CPU, that might be something else, and it's giving me temperature of particular components in very localized areas. It's got a very narrow focus and scope. These 2 here are, this one's sort of ingress temperature at the bottom of the rack and egress at the top. It's saying how much, you can then sort of determine how much that particular board's added to the temperature in the rack and so on. Very different purposes. They're just temperature detectors. They're very different purposes. They're in different places. I've got to understand what they're doing. I can't go, the temperature is, 65 degrees centigrade. Which one? That one? What's it doing? Is it telling me the ambient temperature, the flow through the rack, or what? So, this is a trivial little case, but it's just saying that it's really important to interpret that properly. I've got to know where it is and what it's for. And you can't just get that by going, it's a temperature. So we looked at that sort of thing in the ONF work. This picture's from, it was an input to the ONF work. So I took the ONF logos off because it's not ONF stuff, and we can therefore use it if we want to. Going on from that, we then looked at what that meant. I'm not going to go through this in immense detail, clearly, but the implications of that consideration were that I had a capability. I will point at what these things are. Over the far side there, I've got the rack. It's got multiple slots in it. Different slots have different capabilities. Those slot capabilities are defined here. In the slot, I can have different bits of hardware. They're defined there, and then those bits of hardware have got detectors on it. It's the same thing we had previously on the previous diagram. But some of those pieces of information are about fixed values. Some are about constraints, and some are about ranges and so on that are constrained. And what we found with that work is we started running into challenges with the specific language we had to express these things in, which is why about 3 years ago I brought in a contribution into NetMod, I think it was, and NMRG on how to express recursive reductions in capability statement. Too complex at the time, no good rationale for why we might want to do it. So on that basis, I let it expire. But that's got some useful insights in it into this challenge and why Yang could be a starting point, but isn't necessarily complete as a language and so on. So the intention is, because as I said on the next slide, it's a complex problem space. We have to be careful not to go, oh, it can't be that complicated. Sure, it's not that complex. It is that complex. We tend to trivialize these things, but then that's a challenge because it is that complex. it's boundaryless. You know, it can just keep going on and on and on. So we can't afford to do that. It requires a sophisticated solution, which therefore requires, you know, some deep thinking. We can't afford to spend our time only doing that either. As I said, apparent absence of a language that will help us describe that is not one language. We seem to have a set of languages that do bits and pieces. What we really want is a single way of describing the thing. And we've got lots of hacks around in our solutions that deal with little tiddly bits of this problem because we had to deal with it then. So we've done this, we had to deal with that, then we've done this other way, which sort of get in the way of doing it properly. So there's a complex set of challenges. So understanding the target as a vision, but then taking as lighter weight sketch as we can afford to do initially, and then gradually growing it. That's the NMOP framework piece. Ensuring we focus on applications and we understand what we're trying to do with that particular step. So we're only trying to do this much with this step, so we can then have some achievement. We're not trying to do everything in one go and then taking forever. Ensure we've got significant value from each thing. So in Ivy, we can say, for example, we've enabled ourselves to make this sort of statement of capability. We can show that that's useful in this particular context, and therefore there's some value. Somebody could use it as it is. We don't need to carry on and do any more, but we will carry on because there's more value down the path. And then look at, as I said, down the path. So one step value, next step value, next step value, maybe 6 months, 9 months, something like this. Do a hackathon in IETF meetings and so on. The language challenge is real, so we won't find the language straight away. We'll find we'll have to change it. So we have to expect change in the way we express things, not just increment. It will change. So we'll get something wrong. We'll have to modify it, and ensure the solution allows for the most trivial definitions and the most sophisticated definitions we can achieve, and that those are allowed to mix, so we can have a particular bit of equipment that simply has a line of text that says what it does, another bit of equipment that's got a much more sophisticated model, and we can deal with that mixture so that we embrace the simple label strategy, and we also embrace the sophisticated structure as it grows. And then we focus on providing grounded guiding examples, so we can actually, it's a very complex space. It's very unclear as to what we mean. Like the passive inventory is a simple space in a way, and we can't define the boundary in that. So this is complicated, so it's even harder. But we ground it in real examples of usage of it, so we clear the haze around the, you know, what is this? So that's the thing. We're looking at, as I said, there's a framework in NMOP, equipment in Ivy, possibly entitlements, same sort of challenge. We looked at that, had that earlier. Pluggables in the CCAMP work, we've got to look at capabilities of the pluggables. In green, the green work, it's thinking about what the environmental impact is, or what the power usage is of that function. Can I turn it off, or what does it do? I've got to know what it does. So if you're interested, join us. Talk to, you know, Camilo's here, I'm here, Diego was here, he's here. No. Talk to us after the thing, and we can sort of expand on what we're trying to do. And if we get enough interest, we're going to talk about it anyway and carry on trying to do the drafts. But if we get enough interest, we'll run calls, etc., and you know, engage deeply. We'll be on the mailing list for stuff. So I know I get more presentation time in NMOP if I go on the mailing list. So now I understand that. But okay, well, that was it. Any questions or points? Go ahead.
Yeah, hello, Camilo from NTT. Just to, I know this can be overwhelming, so at least I can give my point of view of what this is that we're trying to get. The idea is that there are like many applications in which you have to define capabilities, and you don't want each one of them to have their own framework of capabilities, yes, right? Of what something can do. Well, in this case of environment that I just mentioned, we don't want to do that. We want to be able to reuse something that is already done. And of course, it's complex. The idea is to move the complexity here, or well, in this work, I mean, yes, so that we can reference it quickly. Well, not quickly, at least that we can remove the complexity from the other types of work. In the case of entitlements, for instance, we don't want to define, okay, how BGP relates to MPLS and how this relates to advanced services in the scope of a device. So we leave that to this, and we just reference them from there. And practically, it's just a reference to a model in the Yang. So this is it. Green can have other type of view and or pluggable. I'm not so familiar with that work, but the idea is that they don't have to define capabilities again and leave it to this.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. So this is Rashad. So question on the framework in Nmap. I mean, you have many types of capabilities, right? You have device capabilities and you have,
Yes.
do you imagine the frameworks for everything would be in Nmap or just some of them?
So by framework, I meant the mechanisms for expressing capability, regardless of what they are. So it wouldn't be taking into Nmap device capabilities. It would be expressing in Nmap how you might state a relationship between two things with respect to constraints and so on. It might be as simple as, well, that's not simple.
Okay.
Might be like that. So the idea is that Nmap's providing the vehicle through which other groups can state capability. And the initial thing might simply be, I mean, to take it right back to the trivializing of it, it might be that you simply provide a string and you say what you are. I'm a router, I'm a this, and that's the Nmap framework. The Nmap framework says put a string in it to make sure you've got a capability statement, and that's it. That would be the most basic, but it's just saying it's a string. It might say put a string and a reference in. The reference will be to another thing with strings and references in, and that's our next stage of framework. And the strings, it could be like, it says it's a router in the string and it points at another thing and it says, I've got this capacity and it's just in English, 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 English. But then eventually we go, oh, because we've got another pointer there, we can now go to another thing. So the English statement now becomes, this is what I mean. And eventually it opens up into a much more sophisticated model. So that's the sort of first of all, it's the framework is, I mean, the framework could be as simple as string and reference, put them in, and then you go point at something which has string reference list in it, and so on. That could be the initial framework, and that could be the Nmap import. And then in Ivy, we go, okay, we'll now use that. We've got the string in our equipment. So in the component's got a string in it. It's got the reference in it. Initially, we only fill the string in because we don't know what to, there's nothing to reference. Then we go reference to something else with more strings and references in, and eventually we get more sophisticated structure. And so, but what Nmap did was just simply said, put a string and reference in everything.
Okay.
There's
okay.
the framework.
Okay. So I was asked because I was also, I mean, I think on when we had Nmap, I mentioned 91, 96 for the device capabilities. That belongs in netmod. That was done in netmod, right? There's many other augments of that would stay there and not come to Nmap.
That's right.
It's
That's right.
good.
Exactly right.
Sorry.
I think this is interesting work. The only thing is that I think some of the capabilities may not translate easily into Yang.
That's right.
Right.
That's
so I think while the starting point can be a Yangli for a module, I think at some point you need to consider that the entities or the tools that consume the information might not be controllers, right? Or
That's right. That's also right. Yes.
So
Yes.
we have to see if there are other languages that this can be expressed in, then that gets consumed by tools, LLMs, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that should be in the background,
Well,
when we start working on this.
that was the reason I said the language thing is a challenge, and yeah. But I'd say that there's one advantage we've got with Yang being here, of course, is IETF owns Yang, and if we think that there's only a small enhancement we need to make in Yang to do something, we can potentially go into Yang next and look at that and see if we can enhance Yang in that way. So it could be possible that we could actually take, because IETF owns Yang. Unlike all the other languages we don't own, we got the opportunity to edge it forward if we think it's useful. And you're right, there could be other languages that we may need to express capabilities in for other usages that are well beyond the simple controller sort of usage. But then we need to look at whether we can do the translation from what we do here into that. So it may be that we've got, here are 3 different languages that we can express capabilities in. That might, and again, that might be frameworky. Yeah, okay, Diego, thank you.
I think it's me, right? Because I see Joel was. No, just a couple of comments of what Rashad and Swami were commenting. First, I mean, personally, and I guess Nigel for sure, and the other authors are aware that we are opening a can of, interesting stuff that probably will have we have some echo, but it's intentional. It's totally intentional.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
We're aware of that, and there are simpler way of dealing with capabilities probably belongs here and belongs to the entitlement. And personally, I hope that the echoes of this will go further. This is one thing. The second thing is regarding this, there is another draft that was presented in MMOP that we were talking about how to change policies. I mean, having a central focal point for the deploying policies. And one of the proposals that is in that draft is that, Django will transport or be used to expose or transport strings that are not purely Django and another language like Rego, if I remember well. So this could be a case as well, because Django basically is a way of communicating and exposing and changing. So I don't see, probably again it's opening another kind of interesting stuff.
Kind of interesting stuff, yes.
So a question to you, Mesh. I mean, this is something that is at the very early stages, so we are far from speaking about working group adoption and so on and so forth. But do you think that the actual charter covers also this, or if there is interest from the working group, we need to recharter to include this? Assuming that there is interest from the working group to work on that.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just collecting my thoughts.
You are allowed to do that. That was the point, wasn't it?
So, and I will give me flexibility in being able to change the answer. But for now, I would say not in this particular working group. But the question would be, yeah, we would probably have to recharter it to include it in this particular working group. I would think that maybe NMOP is something, but I need to confer with the chairs to see if they feel that that's something.
The only thing I'd respond with that is that the intention is not to do the framework here. The intention is to do stuff that simply relates to equipment that's already within the scope of Ivy. So my interpretation was nothing in the charter says that we can't describe capability of something, as long as it's within the scope of the things that, as long as the things are in the scope of the charter. So it's an inventory item. It's a physical inventory item.
I tend to agree with Nigel in the sense that capabilities in general is something that is much broader, and I agree that it's closer to a MOP, but here we are speaking about something that is inventory related. So if I had probably as of today doesn't fit in any charter, but the closest, in my opinion, should be Ivy.
Okay, we'll have to look at the wording we have in the Ivy charter to see whether we can extend, let's put it, the definition for inventory to include capabilities.
I'd be happy to share that looking with you. We can discuss that on the mailing list, obviously. And,
okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
And as usual, we are late.
Tried hard.
We had a good buffer this time, but as usual, we managed to go beyond that. Thank you, everyone, and see you in Shenzhen.
Your message.
Yes.
That's why I'll be back in a moment.
You lost something? Ah.
Hola.
¿A qué hora te quieres ir al aeropuerto?
Yo voy a viajar a las 7, pero estoy pensando a las 4 no sé por qué.
Sí, a menos cuarto. Sí, yo...
Ah, es de menos cuarto.
Sí,
Ah, bueno, pero a las 4 te